Hi, thanks for joining me. It's a little bit of a different setting today because I'm talking about something a little different. So this video I'm talking about a recent session I had, and this session brought us back to Lemuria, which is very cool. Many of you have heard of Lemuria. And what's interesting is that I've put this in a transcript, and it's up so anyone can, get it and read it. But what I did this time that's different is I added excerpts from the higher self. So with express permission from the client, I published and will be talking about certain parts that the higher self came through with some information that I thought would be very interesting and valuable. But for now, I just wanted to talk about the Lemuria session, which was very interesting. And according to the client, or the client, the higher self, that came through when we were in Lemuria, this is a Lemuria that is pre-recorded, I suppose. I don't know if there really is any true recordings of Lemuria, but it's what she said was this was a Lemuria before the Lemuria that we know today. And what was interesting was this was also her very first incarnation as a human. So as a human being in her first body, she was much less dense than we are today, much less dense. And that also made it so the veil between her and, let's say, the spirit realm or other dimensions was much thinner as well. So where it's hard for many of us to communicate with other entities or to other in other realms, whatever it is, for her, while she was in her waking life, it was much easier. So for example, we took her to the place where she lived in that time, and this place was very interesting. It had a domed roof, and how the best way she described it was after the session when she can recall it. And what she recalled was basically like it was living in a giant acorn. So it was like that shape and color, like a giant acorn. And this dwelling was on a cliffside with many other dwellings of the same sort, and she said it was like a city. And she also called these people that lived there a tribe. So that was very interesting. But so we went into her dwelling, and as far as the thinner veil that was back then, I asked, oh, is there anyone living with you here? And she said, well, not really, but I feel presence. And so this presence turns out to be somebody who is in her soul group, someone that she reincarnates with over and over again. And this presence was with her, like just hanging out with her. And he decided he didn't want to be a human, but she did. So they would hang out together in their various forms, and she could feel him when he was near. She can communicate with him despite him not being in a physical body. So that's very cool. And what was very interesting about this too was while she was eating a meal there, because in these sessions we like to see what kind of food is there and what they use to eat the food, things like that. So I'm thinking, okay, what are we gonna get in Lemuria? So it's not about really what she got, which was actually like a puffy dough bread. Apparently it sounded delicious, but how she got it was even more interesting because she basically plucked it out of thin air. So that's very important because what we are seeing and what we're told later by the higher self, sorry I keep looking down because my computer's right here, I'll be reading from it soon, but what we're seeing is that there was such easy, thoughtless manifestation and creation going on at this time, something that we don't see today, at least not that level of ease where, oh, I'm hungry, pluck, here's some puffy dough bread I'm gonna eat, it's very, very cool. So that happened, and then we started talking about what do you do during the day, and she's like, oh, well, some people do visit. Okay, who are these people? How do you know, where are they? Well, they're not here right now. How do you know when they're here? I hear sounds and almost like music or frequencies that call to me to let her know that these people are visiting. So skip ahead to meeting these visitors, and they're not human. They're not human. They're not part of this tribe she's talking about. We go to this mountaintop where the sounds are coming from, which, by the way, the sounds are not coming from the mountaintop. She says they're coming from outer space. They're coming from outer space. Okay. So we go to the mountaintop and there are beings there, and these beings are the same beings that are from her home planet. Oh, well, where do you come from? The Pleiades. She comes from the Pleiades. Oh, it's very interesting. So do you miss it? Well, no, I go back in my sleep, so no, I don't really miss it. So she's enjoying her time in her first human body on Earth, and these beings come to her because they're teaching her certain things. And it's interesting because they're basically reteaching her, because when we reincarnate as humans, we forget a lot. We forget our connection to source, essentially. We have to relearn it. So that's what they're teaching her through symbolism and sacred geometry and light and energy. It's easier read than what I'm saying right now, but through that way, they basically reteach her her connection to source, which was so interesting to hear about. Very cool part. And then it was very cool because, you know, sometimes in these sessions we can release memories, like get rid of memories that hold us back. So for example, like a session I've had previously, my client had a fear of heights. So we had her higher self remove the memory from where it came from another past life. And now she can go over bridges up high, no problem. So it's that kind of thing. So during her Lemuria life, we had a memory erased that would help her. And so because of that, she had to go to the restroom, which is a type of release if you think about it. And then when she came back, we were gone from Lemuria and we were at the Emerald City. The Emerald City. Okay, so we're in the Wizard of Oz now, right? No. So she's at the Emerald City. It's emerald because of the color, and it looks like a crystal palace. Very beautiful sounding. This is where her akashic records are kept. Very interesting. So we go in and we are looking around, rooting around for her contract that she made in this life, because we all have contracts in this life. And she gets help from her friend Jesus. So he shows up and he helps her. Sorry, there we go. And anyway, between that, with him there, we get to the higher self. It's an unusual way. This whole session happened in a non-typical way, but that's the fun of it. I like that kind of thing. So we connected with her higher self, and her higher self came through with very interesting information. So I'm going to start reading some stuff, because so when we connect with the higher self, we always ask, you know, why did we go to that past life in particular? Okay, so now we're asking, why did she go back to Lemuria? And the higher self comes through, and it talks about the joy of playfulness and creating. The joy of playfulness and creating, and that's very important because this client had an illness. And sometimes the higher self will help heal the illness completely, which is amazing. In this case, she was shown this this life in Lemuria because she is meant to go through a process, and this process has to do with bringing more joy into her life for herself, and not having something just magically take away an illness. This is about a process, and we're all here living our lives because we are here for the experience. We are here for reasons. We have contracts, we have things to do, we have missions. And some of these missions have to do with our own self, going through processes, learning how to control our minds, our thoughts. And for her, it's about bringing joyfulness, playfulness, and the joy of creating back into her life. And she's an artist. She knows what that feels like. And so that was part of the reason why she's brought to Lemuria, was to not just remember the joy and playfulness, but also to, it was basically to touch base with her original body and to remember the joys of the flesh, of just being joyful in the body, just being human, and remembering that. And the higher self said that this will have a self-healing effect, which is very cool. And also, it said it's alive like it is right now with her here, meaning what it went into later on was how there is no past, there's no future, there's only present. So you have to realize that all of the lives that we ever lived are happening right now. It's a very odd concept, and it's also something the higher self said the mind cannot grasp it. What it means is that we can't intellectually understand this. We have to feel it. It's a heart language. We have to feel it, feel the knowledge, feel that truth. And she needs to realize that that life she was living in Lemuria with that body that was perfect because there was no drama or illness or anything weighing her down like there is today for everybody in the world we live in today. It was a much less dense existence back then. So it's saying tap into that body that's still in existence because there is no time, so it's still in existence. Tap into that original body where the body was just purely joyful and felt the joys of the flesh rather than being weighed down with illnesses, and you will be able to self-heal. It's very, very cool concept. And I also think it's very important for people who are interested in this kind of thing because our minds are so powerful. You do have the power to change things just with your mind. So then we go into a topic on food, which is interesting. I know everybody's interested in what's right to eat and what's healthy and what do we not eat, and you know, it's just like so much stuff about food. And first it talked about how this client is not in harmony with certain colors of food. So colors have a vibration, a frequency, and this client was not in harmony with the color red. So she needs to stop eating red. And when she stops eating red, she'll notice significant differences. And I thought this was very interesting, especially if this pertains to other people as well. Maybe not everybody, but other people might benefit from trying a color diet. We've heard of a color diet. I mean, I know there's something out there about a color diet, but on a little bit of a deeper level, it's about the vibration of the color being in harmony with your body, with yourself. So you might want to, I don't know, do like a, because I've thought about doing this after I heard this, was let's do like a week-long food journal where you just eat, or you focus on eating specific colors for certain days or a certain week, whatever it is, and see if your body responds a certain way. It might be interesting to some people out there interested in food and health. Then the higher self says it's not the food, but it's the emotions in the mind that is the toxic problems of all bodies. And what I thought about that was how we're just always told, oh, there's so much, you know, trans fat and sodium and cholesterol, and this is bad for you, and this is bad for you. It's like we've lost the joy of simply eating, and that's a shame. And wouldn't it be nice if we just kind of were able to regain the joy of eating without so much worry and emotions put into it, which is interesting that the higher self was saying this. There was also something about blessing the food. So a lot of you have heard about blessing your water and blessing food, and it did stress the importance of this. And also another session I had after this stressed the importance of blessing your food. Again, power of the mind, right? So you can bless your food and take away the toxins in that way, but it takes practice. So just something to look into, an interesting concept as well. Then we are going to health. So we talked a little bit about health, and it's not so much health, it was her illnesses and certain things she was going through. Like she had a migraine earlier in the day and certain things were bothering her. And her higher self says this, says, stop labeling it pain and go with everything she feels. So it was saying she needs to stop labeling pain, because we label things pain and then it's a bad thing and it's something we have to get rid of and it shouldn't be here. But if you think about it, we are experiencing it for a reason. So it's almost like shifting your focus, shifting your mindset to stop thinking of it as pain. Like if you were to erase that word from your vocabulary, what would you label it as, kind of, or maybe even don't label it. It's more like, why is this experience happening in my body? Because we've learned that you know, physical manifestations are, or physical discomforts, illnesses, diseases, whatever, are manifestations of emotional unrest or disrupt. So that was just very interesting to me, and it's kind of like a reminder, like stop labeling it pain. Oh, what was really cool is, so this woman comes in like mucusy and all this stuff and phlegm and sneezy and, you know, allergies. It's allergy season. Hello, spring. And she was really feeling it. And it's a little like nerve-wracking for me when this happens, because when I get a client who starts off with all this stuff going on and or migraine or something, I'm just like, how are they gonna rest enough to get into a nice place in their mind where we can just get nice and deep and relaxed? but we did. And it was wonderful because when we got in touch with the higher self was like, she doesn't need these allergies, let's take these away. So she got rid of her allergies. And it was so great because, I mean, not only was she like breathing clearly and fully, and it was so nice, and you could just tell she was a happy camper, but what was really nice too was she was worried that she would have to leave her home, her home state, because of the you know, trees and the type of stuff that she was around, pollen and stuff, but she doesn't have to move now. Her allergies are gone. So that was really awesome to witness. And it's so nice because, like, I mean, there's a lot of internal healing that does go on in these sessions, but when it's something so obvious like that, it's such a treat, at least for me, to watch and see. It's like, wow, this is happening before my eyes. It's gone. This was very cool. So then we talked a bit about ETs and other entities like angels, implants, sacred geometry. So at one point we do get in touch with an ET race, and the message that comes through is we're on a different dimension, but we've been here. Now the veils are getting thinner. So that is lovely because the ones that came through introduced themselves as guardians and as angelic aliens, which is really lovely. They're protective of us, which is nice. So there was also a message in there, and there's so much more in the transcript. I just didn't want to go over it because I don't like making super long videos, but I just thought this was important. So I took little pieces that were important. So apparently you've heard of an event. So there's the event that's coming. And we touched on it slightly. There was something like that would occur also. It might be the event, or it might be something, it's like a ongoing event that kind of came up. It was kind of weird. There was no label to it, but it was just talked about. And what they said was, it's basically time for the light workers to do their work and be open for seeing the good in these changes and not to be fearful. So that's a message for the light workers out there, for us to not be fearful, because we'll be helping people who are more fear-based come out of that. So we need to stay out of that. And then I have a section that's just a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. And like there's a note on the pyramids and how they were placed. Some notes on star seeds, the alchemy of the starseed body and light bodies, how the light body is not outside of us but within us, and it's always been there since our original human incarnation. So it's an interesting note. More on time, you know, present, past, future kind of thing. And then I just want to end with this chunk here, this quote I wanted to read directly, because some things that came through were just really poetic, and I just wanted to read this. It was talking about a year. So there was a year that occurred recently, and a lot of stuff happened to her. And she was like, why is all this stuff happening? There was a lot. And so we asked, we're like, why, what was the significance of this year? And it said, that was a time when certain alignments were in the skies, in the heavens, and the earth's skin was thin. And so the wisdom of the earth was able to come up and penetrate everybody. It started in the heavens, but it came up through the earth. It was a sacred marriage going on that was a good change for less destruction to come. And that was also, there was something else mentioned, how, you know, there are times of destruction that we hear are coming up, or like things are going to happen. And it did say that this can be changed through like harmonious, peaceful, massive mindsets. So again, it's like, look to peace, look to harmony. Okay? So that was interesting. Anyway, so there you go. That's some insight to the Lemuria session I just had. And I did write a transcript. I published a transcript. It's up on Amazon and my Etsy shop and all that good stuff, and the links will be in the thingy below. But otherwise, if you've stayed this long, thanks for staying and listening to this. It was really fascinating. The client herself was quite fascinating, and so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back with more soon. I hope you guys are having a really great spring and not having terrible, terrible allergies. And I love you all, and talk to you later. All right, bye.